We all know the stories of Greek witches like Circe, who turned men into beasts, and Medea, whose magic was as fierce as her revenge. But what if I told you there's another world of witches just as powerful and mysterious? Witches whose spells were woven from the misty forests, rocky cliffs, and stormy seas of Celtic lands. Why have their incredible stories been buried in the shadows while their Greek counterparts are celebrated in legend after legend? We're stepping into the hidden world, Celtic magic. You'll meet figures like Morgana le Fay, who defied kings, and the Cailleach, who brought the chill of winter. You'll hear the eerie cries of the Banshee and uncover the dual nature of the Leanan Sidhe, who inspired creativity but at a high cost. We'll explore the Morrigan, whose powers swayed battles, and hear the enchanting tale of Cliodhna, whose magic came from the sea. And there's Nighe, the washerwoman at the ford, whose presence meant no life. These witches weren't confined to cauldrons or spellbooks, but they drew their powers from nature itself, from the elements of life. So if you think Greek mythology holds all the great tales of enchantment, think again. The Celtic witches have their own secrets to share, and their stories are just as enchanting and powerful. Are you ready to uncover a world where magic is wild and untamed? Let's dive in. Chapter 1: Morgana le Fay, Mistress of the Mystical Forest. On a misty island called Avalon, there is a place where time seems to stop. This island is hidden away, covered in thick fog, and very few people know how to find it. The air is cool and everything feels calm yet mysterious. In the middle of this magical place, there is a woman named Morgana le Fay. She wears long, flowing robes, and her eyes sparkle with a deep knowledge of magic. Morgana's story is tied to the legends of King Arthur. She is his half-sister, but their relationship is complicated. While some see Morgana as a wise healer who helps others, many fear her because of her dark powers. Morgana's magic can be good or bad depending on how she chooses to use it. Some days she helps heal the sick and protect the weak. On other days, she uses her magic to create illusions and trick people. This makes Morgana a very mysterious and unpredictable character. Morgana le Fay, though a powerful sorceress, was not always filled with darkness. Her journey from a loving sister to a feared enchantress is a tale of betrayal, ambition, and the thirst for power. Morgana was born into a noble family, sharing the same mother as King Arthur. She grew up in the shadow of Arthur, who was destined to become the greatest king of Britain. But Morgana's heart held a secret bitterness. She was often overlooked, and her talents were not appreciated by those around her. As she grew older, Morgana began to study the magical arts. She learned from wise teachers and ancient books, mastering the spells and enchantments that could control the world around her. Morgana's magic was not just for show, it was powerful and dangerous. She could create illusions so real that they could trick even the sharpest eyes, could summon storms, heal the sick, and even speak with spirits. But with this power came a growing darkness in her heart. At first, she cared for him and wanted to help him become a great king. But as time passed, Morgana's jealousy grew. She felt that Arthur had taken everything that should have been hers: throne, the respect of the people, and the admiration of their mutual allies. Morgana's heart hardened, and she began to plot against Arthur, using her magic to create a web of deception. One of Morgana's most famous tricks was the creation of the sword Excalibur's scabbard. She knew that the scabbard held great power, protecting whoever wore it from harm. Morgana secretly switched the real scabbard with a fake one, leaving Arthur vulnerable to injury in battle. This was just the beginning of her deceit. Morgana used her magic to create illusions, making Arthur see things that weren't there and believe lies that weren't true. Morgana also used her powers to manipulate the people around Arthur. She enchanted Sir Lancelot, one of Arthur's most trusted knights, causing him to fall in love with Queen Guinevere. This affair led to a great scandal and the eventual downfall of Camelot. Morgana's influence spread like a shadow over Arthur's court, turning friends into enemies and creating chaos where there was once order. But Morgana's greatest act of betrayal was yet to come. She joined forces with Mordred, Arthur's illegitimate son, who also had a claim to the throne. Together, they plotted to bring down King Arthur and take control of the kingdom. Morgana used her magic to strengthen Mordred's army, making them nearly unbeatable. The final battle between Arthur and Mordred, known as the Battle of Camlan, was a tragic event. Both Arthur and Mordred were mortally wounded, and Camelot was left in ruins. Despite her victory, Morgana did not find the happiness or satisfaction she sought. Her web of deception had destroyed not only Arthur but also everything she once cared about. The kingdom was in chaos, her brother was dead, and her name became synonymous with treachery and darkness. Morgana returned to the Isle of Avalon, but it was no longer the peaceful refuge it once was. The misty island became a place of sorrow and regret, haunted by the memories of what she had done. Morgana's story is a reminder of how power and jealousy can corrupt even the most talented and intelligent people. Her desire for revenge against Arthur led her down a dark path, turning her into one of the most feared figures in Celtic and Arthurian mythology. Morgana's magic, once a source of wonder, became a tool of destruction. Her life became a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting bitterness and ambition rule one's heart. In the end, Morgana le Fay's legacy is one of both fascination and fear. She remains a symbol of the fine line between good and evil, showing how easily one can slip from one side to the other. Chapter 2: The Cailleach, Queen of the Icy Peaks. One cold, stormy night in the Scottish Highlands, winter begins to take over. The wind blows fiercely, and snow covers the ground. Deep inside a dark cave, an ancient figure begins to move. The Cailleach, the old hag of winter, is waking up. She is tall and strong, with wild, tangled hair and eyes that seem as cold as ice. Her skin is rough like the rocks she creates. The Cailleach is not just any old woman. She controls winter itself. As she steps out of her cave, the earth shakes and rivers freeze wherever she goes. Her presence marks the end of autumn and the start of a harsh, icy winter. The people know that when the Cailleach is awake, they must prepare for a long, cold season. She is powerful and feared, bringing snowstorms and freezing winds that make the land tough and unyielding. The Cailleach is not just a figure of winter. She is one of the oldest beings in Celtic mythology. She has been around for so long that people believe she created the very land they live on. The Cailleach is known as a great sculptor, using her powerful hammer to shape mountains, rivers, and lakes. Her story is filled with myths that explain how the natural world came to be. One famous myth is about how the Cailleach created Scotland's tallest mountain, Ben Nevis. The story goes that she carried stones in her giant apron as she walked across the land. She would drop these stones, and wherever they fell, a mountain would rise. But as she grew tired, her apron strings broke, spilling the remaining stones in one place, creating the towering Ben Nevis. This myth shows Cailleach's strength and her connection to the rugged landscape of Scotland. The Cailleach's role doesn't end with creating mountains. She also controls the seasons. Every year she battles with Brigid, the goddess of spring. Cailleach brings winter, the cold winds and snow, but as she tires, her power fades. This is when Brigid starts to take over, melting the snow and bringing warmth back to the land. The Cailleach tries to hold on, but eventually she must retreat, allowing Brigid to bring spring. This battle happens every year, showing the cycle of the seasons. Winter always comes, but spring will always follow. Another interesting story about the Cailleach involves a magical well. This well is said to grant eternal youth to anyone who drinks from it. Only the truly worthy are allowed to drink. The Cailleach is also known for her connection to animals. She is often seen with a giant deer or a pack of wolves, which follow her wherever she goes. These animals are a symbol of her wild nature and her dominion over the untamed parts of the world. In some stories, she can even transform into a large bird or a fierce wolf herself. This shows that the Cailleach is not just a part of nature. She can become nature when she wishes. The power of the Cailleach is immense. She can control the weather, create mountains, and even decide who gets to live forever. The Cailleach reminds people that nature can be both beautiful and dangerous. Her myths have been passed down through generations, teaching lessons about respect for the land and the cycles of life. In the end, the Cailleach's power begins to fade as winter draws to a close. She grows tired and must return to her cave, where she turns to stone and sleeps until the next winter. But even as she rests, her influence remains. The mountains, rivers, and lakes she created continue to shape the land, and her presence is still felt in the cold winds and snowy peaks. Every year, as winter returns, so does the memory of the Cailleach, great sculptor of the land. The Cailleach's story is more than just a tale of winter. It is a reminder of the power of nature and the cycles that govern our world. Even today, Her myths teach us about respecting the land and understanding nature's balance. Cailleach may sleep now, but each year when the cold winds blow, we know she will awaken once again. Chapter 3: The Banshee, Wailer of the Graveyard. It's a quiet night in the Irish countryside. The moonlight shines through the fog and the wind whispers through the trees. Suddenly, a chilling cry echoes in the darkness. This is the Banshee, a ghostly figure from Celtic folklore. The Banshee is known for her sad, wailing voice. She can appear as a beautiful young woman or an old, scary lady with long hair and red eyes from crying. People believe she is a sign that someone will soon die. The Banshee is not just any ghost, she is connected to special Irish families. Her cry is both a warning and a chance to say goodbye. The sky was dark and heavy with clouds as a large, old manor stood quietly in the middle of a wide, open valley. The house was ancient, with thick stone walls and tall, narrow windows. Inside, a family gathered around their grandfather's bed. The old man had grown very sick, and they knew his time might be short. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the grandfather's slow breathing. As night fell, a strange sound drifted through the air. It was a soft cry at first, like the wind moving through the trees. But soon the sound grew louder and more sorrowful, filling the valley with a haunting wail. The family members looked at each other with fear in their eyes. They knew this sound. It was the cry of the Banshee. The grandfather opened his eyes. He had heard the cry too. A tear rolled down his cheek as he whispered, "It's the Banshee. She's come for me." The family tried to comfort him, saying that everything would be all right. But deep down, they knew what the Banshee's cry meant. The old man's time had come. The wailing cry of the Banshee grew louder, echoing through the walls of the manor. The sound was so sad and full of sorrow that it made everyone's heart ache. Even the animals outside were quiet, as if they, too, were listening to the Banshee's mournful song. The night seemed to last forever, with the Banshee's cry hanging in the air. The family stayed close to the grandfather, holding his hand and telling him how much they loved him. The grandfather, though weak, found comfort in their words. He knew the Banshee was not there to harm him, but to guide him to the next world. The cry was a message, a warning that he would soon leave this life behind. As dawn approached, the wailing began to fade. Family noticed that the old man's breathing had slowed even more. It could see that he was at peace, ready to go. Just before the sun rose, the grandfather took his last breath. Banshee's cries stopped and there was silence. The family knew that the Banshee had done her job, guiding their loved one to the other side. Though they were sad, the family found comfort in knowing the Banshee had given them time to say goodbye. They had heard stories about the Banshee all their lives, but now they truly understood her purpose. She was not just a spirit to be feared. The Banshee was also a protector, helping families prepare for the loss of someone they loved. They realized that the Banshee's cry was not meant to scare them, but to help them face the sadness of losing someone they loved. Her legend shows the deep connection between the living and the dead. Over time, the Banshee has appeared in books, movies, and songs. Her legacy lives on, reminding us that death is a part of life, and that love and family are what truly matter in the end. Chapter 4: The Leanan Sidhe, Enchantress of the Moonlit Glen. The Leanan Sidhe is both a gift and a curse, tempting people with the chance to be great while slowly taking their lives away. Long ago in Ireland, there was a young poet named Angus. He was very talented and loved writing poems, but he felt he needed something special to make his work even better. He dreamed of finding a muse, someone who could give him amazing ideas and inspiration. One evening, as he walked through the misty fields, he saw a beautiful woman. Her name was Leanan Sidhe. Leanan Sidhe was enchanting, with a glow that made her look like she was from another world. She offered Angus a chance to become a great poet. "I can give you wonderful ideas and help your poetry shine," she said. In return, she asked for his love and attention. Angus, eager to become famous, agreed without knowing what would happen. Soon, Angus's poems were the best anyone had ever heard, and he became famous. His poems were full of emotion and beauty, and he felt happier than ever. But there was a secret that Angus didn't know. As he wrote more and more, he noticed he was feeling weaker and more tired. Leanan Sidhe was not just giving him ideas, she was also taking his life energy. Each time he wrote, he gave a piece of himself to her. Angus became obsessed with his muse. He spent all his time writing and thinking about her, losing touch with everything else. His friends and family saw that he was changing, but didn't understand why. One day, Angus looked in the mirror and saw that he had become a shadow of his former self. He realized that his health was getting worse because the Leanan Sidhe was draining his life force. In the end, Angus was left with incredible poems, but at a great cost. He had sacrificed his health and happiness for his art. The Leanan Sidhe vanished, leaving him with nothing but his beautiful but cursed poetry. This story became a warning to others. Be careful what you wish for, as sometimes the price of greatness can be too high. Chapter 5. The Morrigan, Goddess of the Battlefield. The Morrigan is a famous Celtic witch from ancient Ireland. Imagine a dark, foggy land where magic is everywhere. Morrigan is a powerful goddess known for her role in battles and fate. She can change into different animals, like a raven or a horse. Her presence is mysterious and frightening because she predicts death and chaos. Morrigan often appears before big fights, warning warriors of what's to come. She is connected to the ravens that fly over battlefields, making her a symbol of both fear and strength. A long time ago in ancient Ireland, there was a huge and important battle called the Battle of Clontarf. This battle was between two groups fighting for control of the land. It was a dangerous time, and people were very worried about who would win. Before the battle, a famous warrior named Cliodhna was preparing for the fight. He was strong and brave, but he was also worried about what might happen. One day, as he was getting ready, he saw an old woman standing by the side of the road. She was dressed in dark clothes and had a mysterious look in her eyes. This old woman was actually the Morrigan, powerful Celtic witch. She was not just an old woman, though. She could change into different forms. First, she appeared to Cliodhna as a young, beautiful maiden. Then, she changed into a huge, black crow. Each time she appeared, she had a special message for Cliodhna. When she was the old woman, she told him that the battle would be very hard and that many people would die. As the young maiden, she warned him about his enemies and gave him advice on how to fight. When she was the crow, she flew over the battlefield, making strange noises that could be heard by the warriors. Cliodhna listened carefully to the Morrigan's warnings. He knew she had magical powers and that her words were important. Despite her warnings, the battle began, and it was fierce and chaotic. Cliodhna fought bravely, but he knew that the Morrigan's predictions might come true. During the battle, the Morrigan appeared in the form of a large black crow, flying over the warriors and watching everything that happened. Her presence made the fight even more intense, as if she was controlling the fate of the warriors. Her shape-shifting made her hard to catch, and her messages seemed to come true as the battle raged on. As the battle ended, many warriors had been hurt or killed. Cliodhna was tired and sad, but he remembered what the Morrigan had said. Her predictions had come true, and the battle was as terrible as she had warned. Even though Cliodhna was a great warrior, he knew that the Morrigan's power was strong and mysterious. After the battle, the Morrigan disappeared, as mysteriously as she had appeared. People remembered her as a powerful and magical figure who could see into the future and change the course of events. Her stories showed how important and feared she was in Celtic mythology. The Morrigan is remembered as one of the most powerful figures in Celtic mythology. People still talk about her today because of her amazing abilities and mysterious nature. She was known for her shape-shifting and her ability to see the future. In stories, the Morrigan is often shown as a symbol of strength and fate. She is linked to ravens, which are seen as her messengers. Her legacy is seen in books, movies, and even modern practices, where people remember her as a powerful goddess who controls the outcome of battles and lives. The Morrigan's story teaches us about bravery and the magic of the past. Her role in history and culture shows how important she was and how her influence continues to inspire people. Chapter 7. Cliodhna, Mistress of the Stormy Seas. The legend of Cliodhna has been told for many years, making her a special part of Irish folklore. Long ago, in ancient Ireland, there was a beautiful fairy queen named Cliodhna. She lived on the coast, where the sea met the land. Cliodhna was known for her stunning beauty and her magical powers. She could make the waves dance and the winds sing. One day, as she was walking along the shore, she met a mortal man named Cormac. He was a handsome and kind fisherman who lived in a nearby village. Cliodhna and Cormac fell deeply in love. They spent many happy days together, walking along the beach and talking about their dreams. They were very happy, but their love was not without problems. Cliodhna knew that her life was different from Cormac. She was a fairy with magical powers, while he was just a mortal. Still, they dreamed of a future together. One day, a terrible storm came to the coast. The sky turned dark, and the waves grew huge and dangerous. Cormac went out to sea in his boat to check on his fishing nets. The storm made the sea very rough, and it was hard for Cormac to return home. Cliodhna was worried about him. She used her magic to try and calm the storm. The sea was too strong. Cliodhna rushed to the shore to help Cormac. She tried to reach him, but the storm was too fierce. The waves crashed over her, and the wind pushed her away. Cliodhna called out to Cormac, but the wind carried her voice away. She watched in despair as the storm took him farther out to sea. Despite her best efforts, Cliodhna could not save Cormac. The storm was too powerful, and Cormac's boat was lost in the rough sea. Cliodhna was heartbroken. She felt as if her entire world had been torn apart. Her love for Cormac was so strong that it felt like part of her was lost with him. After the storm, Cliodhna wandered along the shore, her heart full of sadness. She used her magic to create a small hidden place where she could grieve in peace. The place was beautiful and calm, but it was also filled with a deep sadness. Cliodhna's tears mingled with the sea, and her sorrow became part of the waves. Even today, people say that Cliodhna's spirit still lives along the coast. On stormy nights, they believe they can hear her singing in the wind or see her figure moving along the shore. Her story is a reminder of the powerful love she had for Cormac and the tragic loss she suffered. The legend of Cliodhna lives on, and she is remembered as a magical and tragic figure in Irish folklore. Chapter 8. Bean Nighe, the Washer at the Ford. Sword. In old Celtic lands where rivers twist through misty forests, there lived a spooky figure known as the Bean Nighe, or the Washer at the Ford. Long ago, in a small Celtic village, there lived a brave young man named Ciaran. One day he had to cross a lonely ford, a shallow place in a river, on his way home. It was getting dark, and the mist was beginning to roll in, making everything look spooky. As Ciaran approached the ford, he noticed a strange sight. There, by the edge of the river, was a woman washing clothes in the water. But these weren't ordinary clothes. They were covered in blood. The woman looked very eerie, with her long, tangled hair and a ghostly pale face. She was dressed in green and gray, blending into the misty surroundings. Ciaran was frightened but curious. He had heard stories about this mysterious washer known as the Bean Nighe. The stories said that she washed the clothes of people who were soon to die. Still, Ciaran wanted to know more. He gathered his courage and approached her. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The Bean Nighe looked up from her work with cold, piercing eyes. She did not speak right away, but her gaze seemed to say that she knew more than she let on. Finally, the Bean Nighe spoke in a soft, haunting voice. "You are brave to ask, but not wise to stay. The clothes I wash belong to someone who will soon leave this world. Beware, for death follows close behind." Ciaran felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to ask more questions, but the Bean Nighe's warning was clear. He hurried away from the ford, feeling uneasy. The Bean Nighe's words echoed in his mind as he continued his journey home. As Ciaran reached his village, he tried to shake off the feeling of dread. The next morning, he heard troubling news. A friend of his, someone who was always cheerful and kind, fallen ill and was very weak. Despite the best efforts of the healers, his friend's condition worsened quickly. Ciaran couldn't help but remember the Bean Nighe's words. He realized that the woman's warning had come true. His friend, who had been full of life, was now gravely ill. The tale of Ciaran and the Bean Nighe became a story passed down through generations, reminding everyone of the mysterious ways in which the supernatural touched their lives. The story of Biddy Early. The wise woman of Clare, Biddy Early, was no ordinary woman. Born in 1798 in the small village of Faha in County Clare, Ireland, she came into a world brimming with superstition, a world where fairies roamed the fields, and magic flowed through the air like mist over the hills. Even as a child, Biddy seemed to possess an otherworldly gift. People whispered that she could talk to the fairies, see the future, and cure the sick with her mysterious blue bottle. Her mother, Ellen Early, had taught her the ancient ways of herbs and healing. But Biddy's abilities went far beyond what anyone could explain. She seemed to have been born with a second sight, a rare gift that allowed her to see things were hidden from the eyes of others. Tragedy struck when Biddy was still young. Parents died, and she was left alone, moving from one relative's home to another, struggling to survive. But it was during these hard years that she began to discover the full extent of her powers. Fairies, it was said, took a special liking to her, and she often wandered alone in the fields and forests, talking to unseen beings. She learned to listen to the wind and the whispers in the trees. The people around her noticed strange things. She seemed to know things before they happened, could find lost objects, and would speak in riddles that often came true. Her gift could not be denied. By the time she was in her 40s, Biddy had settled in a small cottage near Fecal, in the heart of County Clare. Here, her reputation as a wise woman, some called her a fairy doctor, began to spread. She became known far and wide for her healing abilities, which were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was the blue bottle that caught everyone's attention. Where had it come from? Biddy herself claimed it was a gift from the fairies, and it was said to possess incredible powers. People would come from miles around, bringing their sick and injured, and Biddy would peer into the blue glass as if it held all the secrets of the world. Her cures were nothing short of miraculous. She had a way of knowing exactly what was wrong, often without even being told. She would prescribe herbs, chants, and mysterious rituals that seemed strange to the outside world but always worked. If someone was cursed or had fallen ill from a fairy's mischief, Biddy knew just what to do. She would tell people to collect water from a certain stream or to say prayers at midnight under a full moon, and time and again, people were healed. Farmers whose livestock were dying suddenly found their herds healthy again. Lost children were returned and broken hearts were mended. There was no question Biddy's powers were real. The stories of her magic spread like wildfire. One famous tale tells of a wealthy landlord whose daughter fell gravely ill. None of the doctors could help her, and the family was in despair. Though he had spoken against Biddy before, the landlord swallowed his pride and went to her for help. She told him that his daughter's illness was a result of a grave injustice he had done. He had taken land that belonged to the fairies. Biddy instructed him to return the land and gave him a potion from her blue bottle. The landlord did as he was told, and his daughter miraculously recovered. After that, even the skeptics began to believe. But not everyone admired Biddy Early. Local priests saw her as a threat. They were afraid of her influence and claimed that her powers were evil, that she was in league with the devil. They warned their congregations to stay away. People kept coming. How could they not, when Biddy had helped so many of them? Those who had been cured, those who had found peace, were not easily swayed. They knew in their hearts that Biddy's magic was a force for good, a gift from the fairies themselves. And Biddy was not afraid. She continued her work, helping those in need, never charging money, only accepting small gifts or tokens of gratitude. She often said that the fairies had given her this gift to use for the good of others, and she took that responsibility seriously. People said she could not only heal, but also see into the future. She would tell people what was coming, whether good or bad, and her predictions almost always came true. Those who crossed her found that their luck would turn for the worse. It was said that she could curse as easily as she could cure, and soon no one dared to speak ill of her. In 1865, Biddy was brought to trial for witchcraft. The priests had finally convinced the authorities that she was dangerous. The trial was a sensation, but when it came time to testify, no one would speak against her. The people were too afraid or too grateful. Some believed that the fairies themselves would seek vengeance if Biddy were harmed. With no evidence, the court had no choice but to let her go. She walked free, and her legend only grew stronger. Biddy continued her work until her death in 1874, becoming even more reclusive in her final years. Just before she passed away, she is said to have thrown her blue bottle into a lake, so no one else could use it. To this day, people say that on quiet nights, you can hear her voice in the wind, catch a glimpse of her spirit wandering the fields of Clare, still watching over those she had once helped. Biddy Early's story is one of mystery, magic, and the enduring power of the human spirit. She remains a symbol of Ireland's deep connection to the natural and supernatural worlds, a reminder that some gifts come from places beyond our understanding. For those who believe, Biddy was not just a healer or a wise woman, she was a guardian of ancient knowledge, a bridge between our world and the world of the fairies. Her legend lives on, a testament to the magic that still lingers in the shadows of Ireland's green hills. We've just explored the magical world of Celtic witches, but there's more to discover. Next video's link is posted in description. We have explained ancient witches from Greek mythology, where even more powerful and spooky witches are waiting. If you thought the Celtic witches were great, just wait until you hear these grand stories. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Get ready for more mysterious magic and ancient secrets in our next video.